Protect your digital privacy with Silent Pocket's high-quality product line of patented Faraday bags, phone cases, and wallets, which will make your devices untrackable, unhackable, and undetectable. Visit silentpocket.com today to check out their full line of products, and don't forget to use discount code SHAREDSECURITY to receive 10% off your order during checkout.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training, or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture, and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca/sharedsecurity to learn how to build a self-defending team.
Welcome to episode 107 of the Shared Security Monthly Show. And this month we are having our annual year in review and our always entertaining 2021 predictions. And joining me, of course, is co-host Scott Wright. Hello, Scott.
Hello, folks.
Hello. And also joining me is, I'm going to make it official, I'm going to say the other co-host, Kevin Johnson. You've been promoted.
The co-host.
He's here enough. Let's give him a title.
Exactly. We have to give you some type of title. I mean, I've given you great and powerful. I've given you, pretty much kingship. Or
let's make him an honorary doctorate.
Oh,
I have been saying for a while that I want an honorary college degree. I don't have a college degree. I don't know how you go and get an honorary one. But dang it, if anybody knows how to get me an honorary college degree, please call.
Yeah, well, Scott and I do not have that power, but maybe one of our listeners does. So,
yeah, sure, yeah,
we can hope.
So here we are. We're in December. It's the end of the year. That was 2020.
No, don't jinx that. Don't say it's the
end.
Of
the
year
not over yet.
Something will happen. End it.
Well, things are happening.
Or something.
I mean,
isn't there an electoral college vote today or something?
Yeah, that's actually what's happening today. That's right.
Yep.
There's that. There's
the day that we're recording.
Yes, the day we're recording. When this will be released is anybody's guess, but actually it will be released before the last day of the year. I can promise you that. So
good.
Yes.
I remember back in October, I was predicting one of our next episodes would be on how the U.S. election was hacked.
Ooh, says the Canadian.
Yeah,
I'm staying out of that one.
Yeah. We talk a lot of politics, Kevin and I, during our weekly show. We don't intend to talk about politics, and that just ends up happening. I don't know why. It's very strange. But 2020. So this was a year that I don't think anybody predicted, right? Pandemic. A global workforce working from home. It's been crazy. What kind of what's significant about this year for you guys? Besides
everything paused for at least 6 months. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
I was going to say for me, I'm actually, I think we caused this because this was the 10th anniversary of Secure Ideas. Was August.
Wow. And what an anniversary.
We made the mistake of we made the mistake of making really big plans in January and buying a whole bunch of swag to give out and planning all these conferences to go to. And so I really believe that we're the cause of everything because of those plans.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not the year for anniversaries. Yeah.
No. Significant to me was the success of so many organizations switching, right? Like, the last trip I took was in February.
Same.
And so many companies switching to remote workforce, and whatever you want to say about all the different problems, I'm not dismissing the problems people had with remote workforce. I get that. But I do think that that's one really good thing that came out of this is the ability to shift to a global workforce. I've got friends that have finally been able to move to where they wanted to move to because they were tied to a job where their boss didn't support, right? Not for obvious reasons, I'm not going to name them, but I've also talked to friends who work for organizations that are having to pay more for staff. They're improving salaries because they're now competing against remote work at companies that pay more, right? Whereas previously it was like, okay, you're gonna have to move away from where you grew up or where your family was and everything else like that. And I personally, with all the badness, like I said, I'm not trying to dismiss or demean any of the negative that happened in 220, but I think there's good that has come out of this.
There's some really interesting things. I mean, I worked in InfoSec for, 20 years. And one of the segments that you always hear about is, business continuity, disaster recovery, right? Yep. And you look at a BCP plan and there's always the line about pandemics and everybody kind of snickers and says, yeah, what are we going to do about that, right? I mean, and they put in the few token things and guess what?
We are.
We had to deal with it. And the funny thing is, well, funny, but weird is very little turned out to be predictable, right? I mean, how much of what we experienced in this past year could you have predicted saying we're going to have a pandemic in 2020? The things that went well, the things that didn't go well. Who would have known there'd be lineups for toilet paper and hand sanitizers and all this stuff, right?
That one really bothered me. It's like, why is everybody buying the toilet paper?
Panic buying.
But to your point, Kevin, about how well the world has adjusted to remote workforce, to me it's sort of forced risk management, right? Or management by risk management, where people didn't really understand what risk management meant before, but they kind of should get it now, right? It's like, okay, our standards say to do this, but really we know what we're going to have to do, right? And for example, working in areas where there might be, confidentiality, classifications of data, right? Okay, so you can't do things in person anymore. What do you do about documents or messages that are supposed to be encrypted with hardware or passed in paper or portable carrying devices or whatever, right? And you just can't do all the things that you were supposed to do for securing information, so they call it risk managed now. So you look at what's the worst case and how do we have compensating controls or whatever. So a lot of that's happening.
Yeah, and I think this whole pandemic situation just accelerated companies' move to the cloud, right? Where, I've talked to customers in 2019 saying, we're working on our digital transformation, right? We got plans to do that. And I think, around February, March, when all this went down, that just accelerated those plans and they had to do something quicker than ever. So, companies like Amazon and Microsoft, I think, made a ton of money in their cloud services just in the last couple of months.
I was wondering about their capacity, right? I mean, what's it going to be like on Christmas Day when 200 million families go on Zoom? What's the hosting environment going to do?
It's infinite, right? It's just cloud.
Yeah. Spin up another
I guess
cloud.
That's true, right? Just grab a little more cloud and go.
Yeah.
Well, we also, talking about that, we also saw, what was that, a month ago or a few weeks ago, a major part of AWS, the IoT supporting stuff dropped. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, my Roomba can't vacuum.
That happened today
or whatever, right?
with Google. There was a massive Google
went down today,
morning, the whole thing. And I saw people's tweets and said, my Google lights won't come on. And I can't get them on because they're all controlled by an IoT device that connects to Google's cloud. What happens when that goes down?
I guess my question is, that doesn't make sense to me. And here's what doesn't make sense to me. I have smart devices. I know I'm a security person. I should be paranoid and and not put a single smart device.
Damn.
love
I was always
Oh, that's
saying
not
I was
true.
never going to get a smart device till Kevin got one, but now
Sorry,
I have no
screwed
excuse.
you. I love the ability to say, Echo, turn off the hallway, and the lights go off. I'm a lazy fat guy. If I can do things from my bed, I want to. And every single smart device that I have has the ability to just be turned on or off. Like, not a single one of
Yes.
them is restricted to, and I did that on, like, when I got my first light bulb that was smart. The reason I did it, I was switching to LED bulbs, and I went to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, not sponsored, and and they had a sale where a Wink hub and 4 bulbs was cheaper than 4 LED bulbs.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
It's subsidized by the Chinese
yeah, no problem.
surveillance
Right?
program. Yeah.
And for anybody wondering, I don't have Wink devices anymore. Long story. And I asked, I said, okay, like if I buy this and I plug them in and I decide that I don't want to use the smart, can I just walk over to the switch and turn them on and off? And the answer was yes. And every device I've got, from my Roomba to the lights in my house to everything. I mean, obviously I can't interact with my Echoes if the internet's down, but that doesn't lock me out of my house. It doesn't lock me out of,
Right.
even my car. I can drive without internet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. People saying I
Depends
can't
on the
turn my
device.
lights. Sounds like people exaggerating.
It could be. But, security cameras, that could be one that, causes problems, or other type of IoT devices that have to have some type of connection to the cloud. I'm just thinking today, like with my kids, that are remote for school. I mean, they do everything through Google Classroom, and Google Classroom was down because of all of Google services down. So, that it does a massive outage like that. This is one of the challenges with the cloud. So, the other thing I noticed what's that? Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I do think that we can talk about those types of outages, but those outages, while bad when they happen, are significantly less than the data center I used to run. Right. And maybe that was talking about my competency, but
yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Back in the old data center days, it would be interesting to compare outages in the cloud environment versus the traditional, that we all kind of grew up in. But one of the things I was reading about, and just covering all the stories from the year, was I just noticed a theme around ransomware. Everything involved ransomware, from breaches to big hacks and all these things. And I think we talked about ransomware in 2019. It was, I think, a huge problem back then, only a year ago. Do you guys think the problem is even worse now because we have this pandemic and we have all these societal things going on with politics and things? Is that increasing the ransomware threat?
Oh, for sure. I think there are just so many plausible opportunities, first of all, for getting people to click on things or do things, right? I mean, there are so many new types of news people want to consume, right? I want to know about my work when I'm working from home. I want to know about news from the health authorities, news about politics. There's an endless number of, plausible stories that you can get people to click on things, and that's used to be the only trigger really for ransomware, but that's not even the case anymore, right? I mean, now you get ransomware, maybe you get some kind of payload installed as a result of phishing or social engineering, but it doesn't mean that ransomware is going to get triggered right away. And we know from some of the recent stories that it actually will sit dormant, or will just be one of the many payloads that an APT can invoke, right? And so I think it's just going to get more complex, harder to find ransomware, and harder to detect and remedy.
Yeah, I think that's made even worse because of the switch to remote. right, a lot of the infrastructure to manage and protect endpoints and what have you didn't quite make it. Right. You know, I know way too many people who had to borrow or buy a laptop because at work they had a desktop computer and work wasn't giving laptops for people to go home. It was just assumed you would have a device that you could use to remote in. And so now you have all these computers and endpoints that have none of the controls we've put on place in the enterprise or whatever, right? And what you said is absolutely accurate. It has provided a whole level of tricks to convince somebody to click. But if you think about it, and Scott, I know that both of you on this call, like you guys know that one of the things that phishing and ransomware and stuff like that uses is a sense of urgency, right? Getting people to click it now.
Emotional appeals.
Emotional appeal, getting them to be anxious about not doing it. When you ratchet up the anxiety level of the world.
Boy, aren't we anxious?
On, right? Yeah, right. Oh man, I don't know. You know, we ratchet up the anxiety level of everybody, and then we also twist everything 90 degrees so people are dealing with things different. Processes aren't working the same. It just became easier to convince somebody to click or.
Yeah. So I think what Kevin's saying is 2021 will be the year of the hermit.
No, 2021 will be the year of the Linux desktop. That is the prediction we have to do every single year until it's true. And so, yeah, the year of the hermit. There are way too many living off the grid YouTube videos, which I'll be honest, I laugh every single time I'm on YouTube and it says, here, watch this video of somebody living off the grid. And I'm like, well, then how did they upload it to YouTube?
It's funny because I never see those videos. It's a symptom of what you do, right?
Yes.
The algorithms.
The algorithm of YouTube.
You never want to look at my YouTube recommendations.
Kevin's a closet doomsday prepper.
No, I'm a closet. I watch every conspiracy theory video in the world. I love them. I collect them. I just never expected so many people to believe them.
Yeah.
So yeah, my YouTube recommendations are awful. They're trash.
Funny.
So let's, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, it's almost like we talk about this every year, that we still see the same issues, the same challenges, the same, not only ransomware, but, how did the ransomware get installed in the first place, right? Somebody clicked it, a system wasn't patched. It's all the kind of the security basics that we all have been talking about year after year. And then there's always some vendor comes out and says, oh, we have the magic solution that's going to fix all this for you. And then it ends up, well, that's FUD, or that's really not the solution, because you can't have one single solution that's going to solve all your problems. Like, what is it? Are we just on a repeating kind of thing every year that we say the same thing over and over and nothing ever really changes?
You know what I think the problem is?
Tell us.
Humans. Security. InfoSec is the problem.
We are the problem.
Yeah. We're the problem. We spend way too much time focusing on the latest, biggest, whiz bang, cool. Like we've joked about it, right? Like, oh my God, my vulnerability has a logo, or when's the vulnerability theme song coming out, right? And I'll be blunt.
Yeah.
I don't care that Struts has a backdoor vulnerability, remote code exploitation. What was it last week? They announced another exploit against Windows XP.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Good old days.
Well,
it's 2020. We should not be talking about XP, but the reality is we haven't enabled IT and development and the business to do their job safely. Why are we focusing on the latest and greatest? If you're running Windows 2000 machines in your network, it really doesn't matter that there's a deserialization flaw in that application, because you're running Windows 2000 on the internet, right? Like,
very basics.
And yet we don't do the basics. We make fun of users. We pick on developers. We're stuck doing the same. What is it? A hamster wheel?
Yes.
Yeah.
The hamster wheel of doom.
I see it a lot in forums where, people get on their high horse, as information security people. Well, we need to do this, and applications should be built-in security, right, rather than patch, right? So, yeah, all the wonderful, euphoric fantasies that we have, but in reality, when as a consultant who's worked in a lot of organizations, there's practicality that really prevents a lot of businesses from doing what we tell them they should be doing. And they have to be looked at one by one, and that's not scalable. So you can't really just say, well, here's the solution. And as you said, Tom, everything has to be layered, and every business has unique risks. So there's not going to be a huge, revelation about what needs to be done to fix things. The way I look at it is we're in the sort of digital Wild West, right? I mean, back in the pioneer days, you're out in the prairies and there really wasn't any law enforcement to come and save you. You just learned from
Save yourself.
from your mistakes. Yeah. The ones who did well survived. So,
I think that you touched on something that I've ranted about many times, but so many people ignore, is that so much of information security's recommendations are not based on actually having done what they're trying to protect, right? The latest one I've laughed at is SMS two-factor is awful, stop using it, don't offer SMS two-factor, and it's like, yeah, okay, I will agree that SMS two-factor is probably the weakest form of two-factor authentication that you can do, and everything else like that. But if I have a choice between people doing SMS two-factor or not doing multi-factor at all, I'm going to pick SMS, especially when you think, I was at this unbanked conference, and it was a financial services conference I was speaking at, and they were discussing, it was a banking conference about how to go to the unbanked, the people who didn't have bank accounts, that didn't and how do we approach those businesses and those people. And they were talking about something, and somebody threw out a number, and I don't remember the specific number, so I'm going to make up the stat on the spot, because that's how that works. But it was something like worldwide, 80% of cell phones are not smart devices, right? And so when you start talking about things like SMS two-factor is dumb, and I've had this conversation on Twitter and elsewhere where people will say to me, well, can't they just install the Google Authenticator app? And it's like, no, not on that flip phone.
Yeah, it doesn't run on a Kyocera 910.
And the answer I got back from people was like, well, they should just upgrade their phone. Like, yeah, screw you, hippie. Are you buying it for them? Right? We just don't know reality of many people. And don't get me wrong,
I agree with that.
I'm blessed. I've got a phone. I've got what I need, right? So for me, the recommendation of don't use two-factor SMS, excellent idea.
Good example.
Right? But it works for me, not everybody.
Right. We need to get out of our bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. So what do you guys
are awesome.
So what do you guys think about next year, right? What obviously the pandemic is going to continue, even though there's a vaccine, and there's already people saying I'm not taking the vaccine, and there's those camps, and that's just going to happen.
All the check.
That's right. And besides all the conspiracy theories and all of that, I mean, the pandemic will eventually get better. We'll all return to some semblance of normalcy, right? At least we can hope. Do you think
normal will be different?
Normal will be different. One question I have is, now that all these companies have moved to the cloud and have changed the way that they work, do you think that's going to go back, or is it going to be kind of this weird hybrid type of working model for most people?
I think you're going to see a hybrid. I think there are companies who are absolutely going to go back. And obviously there are businesses that in person is the way they run, right? McDonald's is not going to move to a full remote workforce, right? People cooking burgers in their house and
landscapers and
right? There's always going to be those, but for the businesses that have switched remote, I think what you're going to see is some of them will switch back very fast. I've had managers before that the idea of not being able to see their staff every day was unthinkable. And I can't imagine them changing their mind just because they were able to do that, right? You're going to have that. You're going to have people who just leave jobs because they're not able to work remotely. So I think we are going to see a mix, and I think that's good. I know people who like coming into the office. I mean, I'm in an office right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I came into the office this morning, and but I think it'll be hybrid. I also think that we're going to see, and I hate doing predictions, but I think what we're going to see is a really big privacy problem, because, and we're already seeing some of it, right? Where it's like, okay, you're working from home, but now I'm going to monitor you, right? I was just reading yesterday about a test monitoring company that got popped, and they were storing and maintaining stuff that they had no business storing and maintaining. They had, videos of the students taking their test, and that they kept. And I understand the reasoning behind taking the video, right, and having the video on and stuff like that. We can discuss disagreeing with doing it, but I understand the logic, even if I don't like the result. But there's no reason to keep that data. And they did, and they got popped. And I think what we're going to see is more and more efforts to monitor, to watch, and it's going to turn into a pretty big privacy invasion. That's what I think. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be.
Yeah, it's kind of like when the whole smart device thing started. What, five years ago or more, Tom, when you and I were, every month our episodes were, the latest hack of a doll, right? That a talking doll, because everybody's going to the cloud now, and there's all these remote apps. There's so many of them where people didn't have a clue about privacy when they're building them, right? So they're going to have to learn pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think we may see the real estate market that may be interesting, especially when we're talking about leases, corporate leases and buildings.
Well, commercial, yeah, terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be awful. And think about the ecosystem around buildings too.
Yeah, in fact, just going back to the last point about, whether people are going to be coming back to work in buildings or not, I think it's going to be a pendulum thing. I don't think very many businesses are going to go back quickly to offices, but eventually people will get tired of working remotely, and there'll be enough reasons that you're going to have, pods of, work pods or hoteling or whatever, right, setups where the majority of the company can get together once in a while or whatever, right? And they'll have maybe temporary arrangements, maybe not a permanent facility, but things like that I think will come. So it's hard to say whether it'll be a huge change or not there.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk about was, we're seeing, and we saw this year, nation state attacks, right? Or at least attacks attributed to a nation state or some nation states. Recently, obviously, the FireEye SolarWinds debacle that's going on right now, attributed to Russia, of course. But what do we think next year in terms of nation states? And now that a new administration is coming into office, do we think, in the U.S. here, do you think that is going to change at all?
Nope. I don't think that will change nation state attacks. I don't believe that it, and I'm not arguing the politics of it, but I don't believe that Biden's administration is somehow going to convince Russia and China and North Korea to stop doing cyber attacks. Right? I've seen a lot of people saying that it will. I've seen people say, well, Trump did this and it was bad, and Biden will fix that, and so we'll stop seeing these nation state attacks. And I've got to point out that we were having nation state attacks before Trump, and we
for a
will
long time.
Yeah. And I think the underlying trend is going to be sort of consistent. And that is really the only thing you can do is plan in resilience, right? I mean, you can't prevent the attacks. You've got to be able to respond to them.
Yep, that's right. So maybe more of a focus on incident response, breach notification, how you handle a breach. Speaking of that, I thought the FireEye breach that happened, I thought FireEye did a great job actually with how they disclosed the breach and even offering countermeasures, which I thought was, something you don't see a lot of in the industry. So.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line is, they were embedded in so many important infrastructure organizations that, they pretty much had to, I think, offer everything to support people in response.
Yeah.
While I agree with you that they had to, we've seen way too many organizations that are in the same boat as FireEye with the perspective of working with government agencies, working with so many high profile things, not do that disclosure well, right? That I think, yeah, I agree. We've got to give them a hand that they appear to have done the right thing and given out as much information as possible. I'm always hesitant because we don't really know, right, what happened and how that works. I think SolarWinds has done a pretty decent job of getting information out as well, and that I'm happy to see. I really wish. I remember one of the very first SANS courses I ever taught. I said back then, why is it that the bad guys share so well and the good guys don't? Right? It just,
Great point.
it's a problem, and we need to fix it. And I think FireEye did well.
Yeah.
So I also like all the people, and I hope you heard the sarcasm there, that are like, oh, well, how dare they, they suck, they did bad. It's like, look, if you believe you haven't been hacked, you're an idiot. Sorry.
That's right.
You probably don't wear a mask either.
Ouch.
And here we go down into the political hole.
Oh, masks aren't political.
Not political.
No.
It's a health
Masks are not
issue.
political.
Yeah, it's not a
I know.
Masks are, hey, let's be very clear. I love the fact that we now have a visible intelligence measure every single time you walk into a building. If you're wearing a mask and I can see your nose, or your mask is covering your chin, you're obviously an idiot. So,
yeah.
So any final predictions for next year, or just gonna hope for the best?
It'll be Linux, the desktop. It's the year of the Linux desktop.
Well, for obvious
said that
reasons, I
last
think
year.
it'll be the year of gamification.
Oh, gamification, yes, for security awareness.
Well, because I think, once we figure out what we want everybody to do, we have to motivate them to do it. And the only way to do that really when they don't want to is gamification. So
I'm not biased, and I agree with you. So I think gamification is a big deal. I think that gamification used correctly,
yes,
is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, it's already being used incorrectly in many ways.
Yep.
Just watch The Social Dilemma.
That's right.
I enjoyed that documentary.
We could do it for good reasons now. Let's do that.
Hey, there are way too many things that have turned out really, really bad because people said, yeah, it's bad, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. I know that's not what you said. Yeah, I think gamification is good. I can't think of any other predictions that I would say this is the thing that's going to happen next year. I would like to predict, so that I can hope it actually happens, that security will become more aware of the fact that security is there, not because people are required to do it, but because we've enabled them to do business better, right? And an example of that is AppSec, right? Stop telling people that SQL injection is this horrible security flaw. Tell them it's a broken part of their app. It is a horrible security flaw, but it's also a break in their app.
It's a bug.
Embed your security.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. I mean, one of the first things I learned when I started doing security consulting for the government, they had a bunch of things we were looking for when we were reviewing systems for their security, status or whatever. And number one was, does the application work functionally the way it should?
Yes.
That would be the first item of security.
How about that?
Yeah. I'd like that to be true. I'd like InfoSec to be more part of the business.
Yep. And just get out of our bubble. Really?
Yes.
I mean, that's been a big theme of this year, for sure. Just look on
Teleportation
Twitter.
would be useful too. Yeah.
Ooh, teleportation, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. More electric cars. Where's my flying car? Are we there yet?
I don't want. No. I've seen how people drive in 2 dimensions. We do not need to add until auto drive is enabled everywhere.
Yes.
And I will tell you that auto drive is awesome. Autopilot, whatever you want to call it, is awesome.
Yeah. Yes, Kevin's a Tesla.
What does it
owner
let you
now.
do when you're not actually paying attention to the road?
Oh no, I'm totally paying attention to the road. I'm
You have to
required
have
by law
your
to pay attention to the
yes.
road.
You have to have your hands on the steering wheel, right? At all times.
They don't have to be on the steering wheel. What happens is every so often it'll say, put your hand on the steering wheel, and you touch it and you give it a little bit of pressure. I will tell you that the best thing that came out of auto drive is I get to sing along with the radio much more emphatically.
All right. That's a good.
Yeah.
This is a good place to end the podcast.
I think so too.
Because Kevin, we don't want Kevin singing, so.
No, we don't.
Well, gentlemen, it's been real. Thank you once again for your insights and what the future may hold for 2021.
It's been another year. Let's hope the next one is even
it's not
better.
as bad. Yeah, let's
It's
hope we
a
don't have
big-
another.
Pretty low bar. Low bar.
Yeah, this year has been insane, to say the least. But
thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yes, thanks for
Absolutely.
everyone
Thank you.
listening over the year and putting up with us. Much appreciated. So we'll see you all in 2021.